The book of Judges is a most interesting work in the Old Testament because it tells of a time when Israel had no king. They were basically just a bunch of scattered tribes in this big open area known as the Promised Land. And they were continuously being harassed by the people who lived there before even they did. And one of these peoples is or are the Philistines. And they basically subjugated Israel. And so in chapters 13 through 16, just 4 short chapters, you can read about what I consider to be one of the greatest judges or liberators of Israel during this time. And this, of course, is the man known as Samson. God gives this guy superhuman strength so that he can accomplish God's will and begin the liberation, as I said, of the Israelites. But throughout his life, Samson is a very selfish man. He's all about himself, not necessarily what the Lord wants him to do. And when he does use that strength, it's almost always out of his own anger or on his terms rather than on God's terms. And not only that, but he goes to prostitutes. He even marries a Philistine woman when he has no business making any company with these people. And of course, that marriage goes terribly wrong. And then right after that, he makes company with another Philistine woman known as Delilah, and she badgers him on the orders, obviously, of the Philistines, and eventually finds out where his great strength comes from, which is, of course, his long hair. So when he's asleep, she cuts his hair off, and then when he wakes up and thinks that he can do what he normally does, which is break the bonds and, crack some Philistine heads, he discovers that the Lord has left him, and he has no strength anymore. So the Philistines, who can't stand him, bind him, and then they gouge his eyes out. I mean, this is real stuff. And for the remainder of his life, he runs a millstone as if he were an animal in the prison. And then it's not till the very end when the Philistines take him out of prison momentarily and place him between these 2 big pillars in their big temple to parade him before all the high Philistine officials that he topples the temple on them and kills even more Philistines in his death, it's said, than when he lives. But the reason for me why Samson is such a great judge isn't for all the things he does in the first 3 9/10 of the chapters. It's because of what he does at the very end of chapter 16. And it's simply this: where Samson had been all about his own will, during his life that is, he's now about doing God's will. And where he had been all about what was best for his life, in the end, he's willing to give up that life. So God doesn't restore Samson. He doesn't give him back his vision. He doesn't restore him to his people. But God is still faithful to Samson where it counts, in that he restores and makes right Samson's heart in the end. I mean, you can see that. He's God's man in the end. He really is. He's a changed man. He's redeemed. And so in our own lives, God may not restore what we had previously, whatever that may be. But that doesn't mean he's not faithful. He really is. He's faithful to us where it counts. Because in the end, for those who seek him, he will, like Samson, restore our heart. I love you both.